I have a product that people buy from me. They want the product. It's whether they want to buy it from me or from my competitor, but they buy a product because they want it.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. I am so excited to introduce you to Kim Fisher. Kim Fisher and I met in a common business incubator that we share. I just loved what her whole energy, her whole vibe. It was amazing, but also what she did for a living. So Kim has over 30 years of experience as a nonprofit executive. And she has worked in all areas of nonprofit management, including business development, training, marketing, and as a CEO. Kim's extensive experience in both domestic and international organizations has given her a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities of the nonprofit adventure. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to be with you here today.
I was so excited when I was like, hey, Kim, can we maybe do a show together? Because there's so many people that I run into in the coaching space, especially. Frankly, they're heart-led people. They love people. They love seeing people thrive. Very often they want to serve as a coach and they feel that that's the best way to do it. I agree. I mean, you should have passion for what you do and purpose in what you do. But there's so much confusion out there about how do I build a profit as a coach? And what about if I'm wanting to serve populations that maybe can't afford coaching, right? Which then leads inevitably to the whole question of maybe what I'm actually called to do or should do is support a nonprofit or even build a nonprofit.
Yes.
And so, Kim, I'm just so excited you're taking the time to unpack some of the ideas around nonprofit today. That's just
excited to be able to share my passion very much with your audience.
I love it. So I know that you are a very successful entrepreneur. You've been supporting yourself for a long time as an entrepreneur, and you did start out having all of that experience as a executive in nonprofits. Then you went out on your own. Is that right?
I did.
Yeah.
My first business, I actually became a coach. And this was, I'm going to date myself a little bit here. This was more than 20 years ago. And coaching was just really kind of starting to get popular at that time. And I was a corporate. Technically, I worked in nonprofit in a corporate world. My last job actually was in downtown San Francisco in the financial district in a nonprofit in that area. I decided to start my own business and went through life coach training. Loved that. I have a degree in psychology and degree in business. I've always fascinated kind of by the dynamics around people and coaching. Started that business and actually found early on, and since this is a podcast, actually a lot of coaches listen to this, I'll just share this part of my story. I found early on that my real strength and experience was as a trainer, more than as being a listener, to be really honest, and I found that it wasn't as satisfying for me. I wasn't as successful at it. I wasn't as good at it. And I ended up becoming a business coach because people kept telling me, how do you do all these things in your business? You've figured out this, you've figured out that. So next thing I know, I actually became a business coach. And that was my first business. And I loved it. Helping people create their marketing and their strategy. And how do you get clients? How do you network? That was kind of my strength and expertise at that time. So that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey over 20 years ago.
Love it. And you ended up pivoting. You want to share with us what drove the decision to pivot and you ended up doing what you do now, yes?
Yes. And it was interesting. I loved what I did, as I said, but, and again, for all your coaches listening, well, coaching can be a tough business to build because what I feel like you have two sales, so to speak. You have to sell someone the fact that coaching is a valuable resource of something that they need. And number two, you have to sell them and that you are the right coach for them. So you've got two sales processes that you're really doing. That's what I experienced. And I still am a single woman supporting myself at the time I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, having a mortgage to pay. I was able to build a business that had some significant success, but not enough to support myself and pay the bills that I needed to pay. As we discussed before, Amanda, what ended up happening with me is I ended up losing my condo in California. I borrowed against it to pay bills during that time, and that's really kind of what happened in that season. I mean, I could call it a failed business, but I don't. I mean, the business was successful. It just wasn't successful enough to do what I needed to do with what my obligations were and my season of life was.
Oh my gosh. I really appreciate your share on that and the vulnerability there because I think one of the reasons that coaching can seem so appealing is it looks like it's a risk-free thing. Like it looks like it's this thing that, oh, well, I'm not getting a brick and mortar. I don't have any inventory. There's no manufacturing. I can deliver it myself. So like there's a lot of reasons that coaching is a very appealing business model. There's certain factors, like before we went live, I was sharing just the fact that I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and my cost of living is very different than if I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, was for sure certainly a factor. And, so one of the things that came to my mind as you were telling this story is like the pressure caused a pivot,
Yes.
and I think sometimes we were really afraid of that pressure, but really it sounds like you treated it more like a signal, like, hey, this is not sustainable. It's good, but not good enough. And so I need to pursue something that is much more effective. So can you walk me through like how did you determine that, well, first of all, I guess the pivot being necessary, you probably saw it in your monthly bills.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like, then what next? Because you continued the entrepreneurial journey and you continued to stay in the lane of an expert business. So, how do you know to turn in this direction?
Well, it was interesting, how many things come your way that you don't always expect, and you take the opportunities as they come. While I was still doing my coaching business, kind of as a side thing, again, my passion was always nonprofit. And I've made 50 international trips, 40 of them to developing countries through work that I've done. And at the time, I hadn't done all of that. But it had always been an area of interest of mine. I started my career in banking actually, and then ended up in my first nonprofit. I'll just kind of jump back there, working in the development area of a inner city organization in San Jose, California. So that's where I started it as a 24-year-old, kind of going off on that part of the journey. I said until I stepped out and started my coaching business. And while I was doing the coaching business, I had the opportunity to take on a part-time job as a director of development for a local organization that was working in Russian orphanages. And at this time, I had already made 2 trips to Russia. It was an area of interest of mine. Another great story for a different time, especially what's going on in our world right now. And so I got offered this opportunity, which gave me income while I was doing the coaching business. And then when, again, in that part of that journey, I ended up encountering another organization who made me a full-time job offer as CEO of Arms of Love International. And that was really what created the pivot. So I didn't decide to leave coaching and look for something else. It was the opportunities began to present themselves. And then I moved in to spend 7 years, again, as chief executive of Arms of Love International. Arms of Love operates orphanages in Nicaragua and the Philippines, Senegal, Brazil, Mexico. So I began working in all those countries. But what it did was it took me into deeper into my own passion and skill set that I already had in the nonprofit world. And I did that for 7 years and then left that in 2014. And that was when I made the pivot to go back into being an entrepreneur again. So I had this little time in between there that deepened my skill set, deepened my credibility, and gave me that breather to kind of recapture. In the meantime, I moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, much more affordable than the Bay Area. And so it allowed me to live differently here and be able to start my business again in a more, a little bit less, I don't want to say less stressful, but just with less financial obligations than I had in the Bay Area. So that was kind of a quick version of my pivot there and how that happened.
Yes, I love that. And sometimes when I'm working with people, they're struggling because that financial pressure can be very stressful. And especially if you've found yourself overextended with like masterminds and certifications and programs, like those things are amazing, but they don't do the work. Like there's work that has to be done. And I'm so curious when you rejoined the entrepreneurial world, What did you know right away to do differently than the first time?
Oh my gosh, that is the best question, Amanda. So there's four things, and I will tell you exactly what they are that I saw very differently in the two businesses that I had. So the first thing is you have to have a product that people want. Oh, we didn't even talk about what I actually do right now.
Yeah, well, what is it that people
So,
want
so,
that
so
you're
let, let me let
successful
me
at?
let me let me talk about what I actually do, and that'll make more sense when I answer this question. So,
Love
what I
it.
have a very unique niche in the nonprofit world is that I actually start nonprofits for people. So, I create all the paperwork to have an organization become C3 tax exempt, and that includes everything from incorporation to creating their program narratives, to creating the board of directors and bylaws, to creating a 3-year budget, and filing the IRS paperwork. We could maybe come back to that later in this conversation, but that's what I actually do now. And so that is my business. So going back to answering your question is that I had to find, so then the first thing is, do you have a product that people want? Again, coaching is, I think, can be an inherently difficult product to sell for the reason why I said that, because sometimes people want it but they can't pay for it, all the reasons for that. In my first business, that was more of a challenge. In my current business, I have a product that people want. I've done almost 300 of these nonprofits in the last number of years. The second question is, can you find the people that you want to work with? So when I started my coaching business, I had been an employee of a nonprofit in downtown San Francisco. I had not been a life coach or a business coach. So I didn't naturally know entrepreneurs that I could coach and work with. So I had to spend breakfast, lunch, and dinner networking. I mean, I was at everything all the time trying to meet entrepreneurs to build the coaching business. And so I was able to do that because thankfully networking and connecting with people was a strength of mine. So it was more intuitive. It wasn't as challenging, but I still had to do all the things. My second business, as a nonprofit executive for the decades, I already had contacts. I already knew people in these worlds. I didn't have to go back and create that. The third thing was, do they see you as an answer to their problem that they have? And again, I wasn't an experienced business and life coach at that time. I didn't have a decades-long business to be able to coach an entrepreneur. I was successful in what I did, but as a nonprofit executive, if I can say, I have 30 years experience as a nonprofit executive, and by the way, I have more than that. I just don't say that because I don't want to age myself too much there. But I have a lot of experience. Yeah, I have a lot of experience in what I do. I've been a chief executive. And so immediately I create credibility when I'm having a conversation. I don't have to build that very, very, very much. And then the fourth reason is, can people pay you? And again, entrepreneurs that are starting out, we know as coaches that often people want the coaching, but they can't afford it, don't want to pay it for whatever reason. And that's definitely a barrier to overcome. Now, in my current world, by definition, work with people that can't afford to pay me. Nonprofits, by definition, can't afford to pay you. And it's really kind of funny, as I don't say this to very many clients, but what goes on in my mind, they say, I can't afford you. I'm just a nonprofit when I feel like saying it, but you know who's not? Me. I'm not a nonprofit. I spent my career not making very much money, not doing all the things as a nonprofit executive. But anyway, so people have to be able to pay you. And the reality is, for me, I am not inexpensive. I'm not the most expensive out there in the field that I'm in, but I'm not inexpensive at all. And my feeling is, in the work that I do, is if they can't pay my fees, then they have no business starting a nonprofit because they can't raise money. It's
That
a
was
litmus
my
test.
whole thing is like I had to learn along the way what is the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. And it was I can't even tell you exactly who spelled this out for me, but it made a huge difference. And it was like nonprofit does not mean no money.
Exactly.
It means that you actually are a steward of money, which means you're attracting money and then you're stewarding that money to, yes, people who probably cannot pay for whatever reason, but you're buying the services, you're buying the materials, or you're rallying the volunteers, like you're doing all of these things. It's not that you're just magicking good things out of thin air. It's that you are stewarding cash flow towards those nonprofit priorities. Whereas for a for-profit organization, honestly, a lot of businesses really are not profitable, right? I don't care what kind of business we're talking about. Why? Because you have to pay for the client acquisition. You have to have that presence in the marketplace. Your time is worth something. You got the rent, you got the groceries, you got the kid that's going off to college, whatever the
Yeah.
thing is, that like there's a cost to you spending the time. And so I'd love for you to quickly unpack for me, like if somebody's like, you know what, I think I might want to start a nonprofit because
Mhm.
I want to serve an audience that doesn't traditionally have the capacity to pay. I really think that like my coaching expertise or my other expertise would be beneficial to this population. It would be a really good thing in the
Yeah.
world. Like, what's your quick checklist or quick hit list of things of like, yes, you should pursue that, or maybe you might recommend another course of action if they really want to serve that population.
Yeah, great. So I've got another. I have another four things on a list here that when people ask me this question. Why do people start nonprofits? First of all, and the number one reason why people come to me starting a nonprofit is because they're already doing the work. They're already out on a Saturday feeding the homeless. They're making peanut butter sandwiches and delivering them, or they're doing work with youth, or they're helping orphanages international. I do a lot of international organizations for people. People that are, a guy I just did who was installing water filters in Uganda, and he was doing it with all of his own money. So that's a very, very common kind of thing. I've worked with a number of actually therapists that want to start part of their practice, kind of might, even relevant to the coaching question too, is therapists that are having parts of their practices like they're working with foster care kids or kids from international adoptions, those kind of things where they want to be able to offer free or reduced services to these families, kind of as a way of giving back in the world, out of their passion. So I think the first thing is people will start a nonprofit because they want to get charitable donations and they don't want to keep spending all their own money anymore to do that. So that would be probably the number one reason why people come to me to start a nonprofit. The number two reason is that people will say, I don't want to do this by myself anymore. I want a team of people to come and help me. Well, the reality is, as a for-profit, someone's not likely to give you money and time for you to make more money if you're a for-profit company. So people start their nonprofit piece because that's when they get the volunteers and the other people that say, oh, I have the same passion, I want to join you in this work. That's when you build a board of directors. And of course, that's a significant difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. It's governed by a group of people. It's not owned by anybody. Now, I have ways that I create boards that protect founders, another conversation for a different time. So a founder can be protected, but at the same time, it is governed by a group of people. The third reason is that people want to continue in perpetuity. Right now, you and I both have businesses. If we stop our businesses, we either sell the business or we shut it down. Whereas the nonprofit can continue on because it has a board. So their passion, their vision, they want it to have other people continue on without them. I have a guy I'm starting working with him today. He's a vet, a Vietnam vet, and he's unfortunately has bladder cancers towards the end of his life, and he wants to create a legacy for something that he wants to do with vets. He has this very specific thing he wants to do, and that's what he's doing with that. So he wants something to continue on without him. And then the fourth reason is that people want to separate it out from their personal finances. When you actually have a nonprofit, you are a corporation. Liability and those kind of issues are separated from your business and your personal finances. So those are the key reasons. So I would say if somebody is, again, a philanthropic individual who's doing work that's kind of had this passion, and those are really the reasons why people choose to formalize a nonprofit. And one of the things that I will say, Amanda, is that I think that people think that you've got to be like this Mother Teresa to start a nonprofit. And I'll tell you, I work with, in fact, I have a newsletter I call Everyday Heroes. The people that I work with are everyday people just like you and me. And they have a passion. Normally there's something that's happened. Often, like I've had parents that have had kids that have been disabled. They've learned some things in that journey, and they want to share it with other people. And I mentioned again that this veteran, again, people that have fed the homeless. I mean, those are common things. I have people that help people, going back to the coaching dynamic. A woman I worked with in Georgia, she was doing coaching with high school students, getting them ready for college, and they were underserved communities, getting them ready for college. Well, she actually formalized her nonprofit so that she could get grants and do other things like that to help them. But I would just say, I'll just kind of summarize this too. One of the challenges of starting a nonprofit is that it's starting a business on steroids. I mean, we think starting a business is hard, but the difference is for starting a business. I mean, like you and I have a product that people buy from me. They want the product, they buy it. It's whether they want to buy it from me or from my competitor, but they buy a product because they want it. Nonprofits, you've got to sell an idea. So you're selling, like when I was with Arms of Love, I had to make you, Amanda, care about a Nicaraguan orphan and why you should send your hard-earned money to Nicaragua so that the Nicaraguan orphan had a chance to go to school and have a future. So there's some interesting excitement and a wonderful journey in the nonprofit world, but certainly some challenges.
I love this conversation, Kim. And thank you so much for walking us through that and the decision making. Everyday Heroes, it's a newsletter, right? How can people get access to that?
Yeah, and I write this, goes out monthly, about just stories about my clients. And I have a website. My website is www.visioncatalyst.org. And there's a link on there for resources, and you can click the resources and push the button, and I get notification. You end up on my email newsletter list. And again, just sharing stories about the everyday average people that have a passion to change the world.
Dear listener, I know that's you. So do make sure that you go and check that out. And we've got all of Kim's links, her social media, all that stuff in the show notes. Kim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for letting me share. Like I said, I feel it's a great gift. And what I find is that people are starting nonprofits at an even increasing rate. And I believe very much my business grew during 2020. And I think that after what we went through in the world in 2020, that people have woken up as we've all kind of made changes in our lives. And people are saying, how can I make a difference? What can I do? What's my mark?
There's that pressure causing pivots, right?
Exactly.
I saw the same thing actually in the coaching space, that a lot of coaching businesses really grew in 2020. Whether you are building something that is for profit or whether you are, I really personally just think as a business owner, it's really important to know why you're making money. And whether you are an entrepreneur and you're like, hey, I don't want that board of directors. I want to be able to be nimble. I want to go fast, right? Like that's amazing. And like also just have a plan for like, what is your give back, whether it's going to be that voluntary time, whether that's going to be services in kind, whether that's going to be writing a big fat check or working with Kim and setting something up that is unique and tapping into your entrepreneurial spirit that way. And I think what's really cool about this conversation is that no matter what you do, you're going to need to build those influence skills. You're going to need to build those advertising presence skills.
Yes.
And choosing to go the nonprofit way does not necessarily mean it's easier, but I hope it's a little bit easier when you get to know people like Kim who make a living just like showing people how to do it. And like, that's amazing, amazing, amazing. Dear listener, we're going to be back with another episode. So make sure you don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you love this, make sure you share it with a few friends. Just grab the link to the episode, send it to them on text. I hope that you've got friends that are, considering contributing to nonprofits, considering how their business is going to have a socially positive impact no matter what they do. So do share this with a few of your friends. And finally, if you're loving the show, if you've listened to it a few times and you're like, dang, I wish more people could listen to it, the number one way you can help is to leave a review. So if you could leave us an honest review of the show, we are just so grateful for you taking the 30 seconds to do that, because it helps a new listener decide whether they want to spend 20 minutes with us. All right, with all of that, I will see you in a future episode. And until then, make sure you do what matters.